welcome to our groundbreaking pop-up live webinar series. Hello, my name is Luke Appleby from Equilibrium Risk. In this, our first pop-up live series, you can discover a wealth of knowledge about Martyn's Law, one topic at a time. Each episode is no more than 30 minutes and delivers a bite-sized focused learning session on like never before. But that's not all. In addition to these dynamic webinars, we are also rolling out an exclusive live audio event where you can dive into the conversation and be part of the discussions. Today, I am broadcasting live across our social media channels of LinkedIn and YouTube. I will be monitoring the comments. So if you do have any questions, please pop them in there and I will do my best to answer them. So today's webinar is about, in today's webinar, I am going to look at the 6-task plan. So that's the recommended terrorism preparedness plan that's come about because of this new legislation. So we'll be diving into each of those 6 tasks and discussing a bit more what it actually means for manufacturers. But before we get there, let's have a quick look back. So Martyn's Law, I'm sure you're aware of Martyn's Law, you've heard about Martyn's Law. It came about because of the Manchester Arena bombings back in 2017. Martyn Het, one of the 22 victims who the legislation is named after, his mother, Fagan Murray, has been campaigning about improved preparedness, improved security measures at public events, public spaces to prevent things like the Manchester Arena bombings happening again. The new legislation, it's actually called the Terrorism Protection of Premises Bill, has now entered the consultation phase. So it's a 6-week consultation phase from the 1st of February, where they're asking for feedback, opinions from local businesses, local councils about how the new legislation will affect them or may impact them to try and get a fair and balanced approach to this new legislation. Although the new legislation is aimed at public spaces, public venues, it does have an impact on manufacturers because of some of the aspects fall within the scope of Martyn's Law, such as temporary events. Last week we talked about the consultation in a bit more detail and the slight changes that have come into effect. So if you want to watch that, have a look back at our last week's video. Other episodes in this series have included why Martyn's Law affects manufacturers, the impact it will have on manufacturers, the unique challenges that manufacturers will face with complying with the law, and lastly, we talked about the benefits that Martyn's Law will have on manufacturers. So if you are interested in any of those topics, have a look back at the previous episodes for a bit more detail. So today's topic, we're talking about the 6-task plan. Now, the 6 tasks that are recommended in creating your preparedness plan are the first task is plan to warn people on your premises that an attack is occurring. Plan to evacuate your premises. Task 2 is plan to lock down your premises. Plan 3 is to evacuate your premises. Plan 4 is to call the emergency service and relay the relevant information. Task 5 is to have a plan to use your first aid and fire safety equipment. And the last plan is consider how you are going to relay this information to your local businesses and your local neighbours that an attack is occurring. So let's delve into these in a bit more detail. Plan one, plan to warn people on your premises that an attack is occurring. Now, as a manufacturer, how are you going to do that? Firstly, who is going to be responsible for relaying that information across the business? And what information are you reading? What information are you telling employees, staff, and visitors? Remember, you want to notify them that an attack is occurring, but you don't want to cause panic um, in the facility. What information you're going to relay them and what you want them to do with that information. It needs to be a robust method of communicating that information and maintaining that communication throughout the process of the attack. So a lot of thought needs to go into how you're going to communicate with people from shop floor, where it might be a loud, noisy environment which is very difficult to communicate, to the office area, to sites with multiple buildings, multiple facilities. How are you going to ensure you can communicate the relevant information to those people that need the information? Now, as in all crisis management scenarios, the 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 success of your response will live and die on your ability to communicate. So, from a manufacturing point of view, from any point of view, really, you need to spend a lot of time thinking about how you are going to communicate and warn people on the premises that an attack is occurring. The second task is to plan to lock down your premises. So again, what doors, what windows, what roller shutters, what gates are going to be locked down in the event of a terrorist attack, and who is going to lock those doors down? Who is the responsible person to go and lock those doors, lock those windows, lock those roller shutters, etc.? What if that person's away? Is there a backup? Is there a backup person? How are you going to do it safely? Remember, you don't want to be putting members of staff in harm's way. If, for example, there's a marauding terrorist attack, so you may have a knife or a gun or something, another form of a weapon, the last thing you want to do is for people to be running into the location of where this terrorist is. And similarly, if there's some form of CBRN attack, so chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear attack in the office, say, for example, a letter bomb or some suspicious materials being posted through a letter, the last thing you want to be doing is for people from the shop floor running into the office, or people from the office running into the shop floor and contaminating that area. So how you're going to lock down the premises needs to go into a lot of thought. Do staff members know how to lock the doors, lock the windows, lock the roller shutters? Are they sure and competent in doing it in a safe and quick manner? Thirdly, how are you going to evacuate the premises? Firstly, how are you going to communicate the fact to everyone on site that the site needs to be evacuated? Is it the whole site, or is it just part of the site? Is it just one building? Is it just one area of the site that needs to be evacuated? How are you going to communicate that to the relevant parties? Remember, you'll have visitors on site. So how are you going to make sure visitors on site are as aware of what's going on as employees? Remember, we don't want to be evacuating in such a way that we're going to put members of staff or visitors into danger or jeopardy. If there is a vehicle being used as a weapon, for example, the last thing we want to do is to evacuate people to the car park where the car or the vehicle is being driven. And again, if you're evacuating, how do you relay that information without notifying the terrorist? For example, if you put on a tannoy system that everyone is to relocate to the north car park, for example, a terrorist can easily hear that and then make their way to the north car park and continue their attack. So how you relay that information? How can you get staff members, visitors to evacuate in a safe, quick manner without causing stress or putting people in danger? So again, lots to think about when you're planning to evacuate the premises. The fourth task is to plan to call the emergency services. So who is going to be responsible for calling the emergency services? How are they going to notify the emergency service? Yes, everyone has a mobile phone, but on them these days, but what if the mobile networks are down? What's our secondary form of communication? And what information are they relaying to the police? Remember, it needs to be done so it's a robust thing, so it's a robust process, so the people know exactly who to call and what to say. If it's a case of a lockdown or a evacuation, people are likely to be in a heightened sense of danger and they may not be thinking clearly. So how do you make sure that the relevant information is relayed to the police as quickly and concisely as possible? The next part of the plan is the task is to use available first aid and fire safety equipment. So first and foremost, are your fire risk assessment, terror risk assessments up to date, and are your first aid equipment, fire equipment up to date and useful for task? Do you have the relevant equipment, such as trauma packs, for example, in your first aid kit in the case of a terrorist attack? Do people know how to use this equipment? Do people know where it's stored? Do the right people know where the right equipment is stored? And is it up to date? There's no point in updating your terrorist equipment or your first aid and your fire safety equipment, but then for it to be out of date in 3 years' time when the actual terrorist attack occurs. So do people know where it is? Do people know how to use it? Is it easily accessible? Is it in safe areas where it's not going to be impeded by a terrorist attack? And the last task is consider how to make your neighbours and local businesses aware that an attack is occurring. So should an attack occur, for example, using a vehicle as a weapon, how are you going to communicate that information to your neighbouring businesses so they can start taking steps to protect themselves, protecting their staff, protecting their visitors? Do you know the right point of contact to speak to? Is it by phone? Is it by email? Is that contact list up to date? Do you have the relevant member of staff in your organisation who's going to take that responsibility to notify those external businesses? And what about those external businesses notifying you in the case of an attack occurring? Okay, do they have the right point of contact for you? So lots to think about from a manufacturer's point of view of how to create a preparedness plan. So what do you think of that plan? Does it cover everything you think? Are there things that you think have missed that are particularly pertinent to the manufacturing environment? Does it go far enough to protect your employees and your visitors? How about how easy it would be for you to write that plan? Do you think it's a day, 2 days, half an hour to write that plan and everyone's aware of it? How are you going to communicate that plan so that everyone knows what the plan is and how to act? Not just when you first write it, but on a regular basis. So lots of questions there, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think of that six task plan. So if you have any questions, if you would like to join the discussion, ask me anything, or have your point of view across, don't forget we have our live audio event tomorrow afternoon. That's Thursday, the 15th of February at 1 p.m. across on LinkedIn. I shall drop the link to that in the comments below, and it'd be great if you could come and join me for that discussion. So that's tomorrow, 15th of February at 1 p.m. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ask any questions and dive in and join in the conversation. So today we talked about the 6 task plan, the actual preparedness plan that you may be required to complete if your business falls within the remit of Martyn's Law. So as a reminder, let me just get up the six tasks are: plan to warn people on your premises that an attack is occurring, plan to lock down your premises and plan to evacuate your premises, plan to call the emergency services, and then number 5 is to plan and use available first aid and fire safety equipment. And the last one is to consider how you might make neighbouring businesses and neighbouring the local community aware that an attack is occurring. So thank you for watching this today. Our next live webinar event is next week. So that's Wednesday, the 21st of February, again at 9:30 in the morning. Again, I'll be broadcasting live across LinkedIn and YouTube. And the topic will be enforcement. So how is Martyn's Law likely to be enforced? So it's going to be one not to be missed. So all that leaves for me to do is to say thank you and goodbye, and I hope to see you tomorrow.